We're gonna get going. So, I am Joanna Hodorowska. My company is Nutrition in Motion, and basically what I do is I help athletes to perform at their best and work on their nutrition so that they actually are at their ideal performance level. And a lot of athletes think that their ideal performance level is all based on weight, and it really isn't always based on weight. There's a fine line between eating too much and too little, weighing too much and weighing too little, and it's about finding that right body composition and that ideal body fat range and pairing the nutrition to your goals and what your activity is and to your schedule, so that you can actually keep doing the same thing over and over again and making modifications based on whether it's a track workout, whether it's an endurance session, or whether it's a race. So all these things all come into play, and nutrition has to change a little bit for all of those, and it's all going to be different for every individual too. So some people are plant-based, some people need animal proteins, some people don't eat vegetables, others eat a ton of them. And so it's about managing all those little aspects and kind of changing the way you view the way you eat so that you can actually perform better and not actually fixating on the scale, because it's not always about the number on the scale. The scale is great to let you know, and especially if you have like a body fat scale, like a Tanita one, those are great to let you know whether you're dehydrated or not. And if you weigh yourself in the morning and you weigh yourself in the evening, the numbers are going to be completely different, because during the day you start drinking more fluids, you get a little bit more hydrated, and you will put on 3 pounds generally of just fluids from the day, and your body fat will be about 4 to 7% lower just because you're more hydrated. So if you're going to be weighing yourself on a scale, especially on a body fat scale, make sure it's at the same time every single day, because if you change between morning and evening and you're fixated on the number on the scale, you're going to be pissed off half the time in the evening because it's always heavier than you are in the morning, you know. But in the morning you're always going to be pissed off because, gosh darn it, I'm never at that body fat percentage I wanted. It's because you're dehydrated in the morning typically, because you know you slept that 8 hours. Well, we're supposed to sleep 8 hours, and you typically don't sleep with an IV or with water next to the bed and constantly drinking every few hours. So you typically are dehydrated in the morning, so that body fat number is going to be different. So kind of pay attention maybe once a week to the weight and kind of look at what the trends are, as opposed to doing it every single day, because you just will become totally neurotic, and that's a completely different issue. Well, then you get fixated on various other numbers too with nutrition, and you might be actually focusing on calories, and it's not about calories, it's about meal combinations. So it's not always calories in, calories out. It's the type of calories that are more important. So those are some of the things I'm going to be talking about. The other thing about the body fat scale is it will give you that indication of whether you're hydrated or dehydrated. So it's great that if you want to know how much water you want to replace, that's a great tool to use, is weigh yourself before you go out on your run, and then weigh yourself when you come back. And if if you're a pound or 2 or 3 lighter, you need to take in a lot more fluids the rest of the day. And then you can also check the color of your urine to see where you're hydrated and not hydrated. So it can be a good tool in that way. But do not get fixated on just the number on the scale, because it's not always about the number on the scale. It's about getting the right nutrients in, and are you feeding the body properly with the meal combination, so that you get the energy that you need for the run and the activity that you want to do. Does that make sense? So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them when you have them. Don't wait till the end. I'm going to try not to make this a 20-30 minute talk, although somehow they get longer with all the questions that happen. So, dieting is one of those things that everybody always wants to lose weight. Everybody wants to be at this ideal weight, but it's trying to find that ideal body fat percentage that works well for you. Because if you go too low on body fat, you don't have energy to be able to do the activity that you want to do. If you take in too many calories, obviously then you might be carrying too much weight, and then it's harder to run. But if you're depending on how you're eating, you might be actually feeding your fat stores rather than utilizing the fat stores for energy. So it's about trying to manage the meals and manage the composition of the meal so your body starts to burn the fat stores rather than burning just the sugar stores. And that's what you want to try to think about. It's there's a term called metabolic efficiency. It's not about trying to get you into that ketogenic diet so that you're eating hardly any carbs at all, because that means that you guys couldn't have beer after your run, and that would be really a bad thing for most of you, right?
Yes.
Yes. But if you're having that carbohydrate after your run, I mean, that is something where you definitely can utilize those carbohydrates for recovery, but keep it to 1. But you also want to add the fat and the protein, and preferably greens, to ameliorate that recovery so that you can actually do more again tomorrow. Because that's a lot of it too, is you want to get those right nutrients in so that you can get that recovery meal and then be able to go ahead and run again tomorrow, whether it's in the morning or again in the evening. So you want to think of beer as your carbohydrate, but you also want to manage it with the right kind of proteins, the right kinds of fats, and the right kinds of greens that have all the nutrients to replenish the body in the right way.
What about timing? So we finish now. Are you an advocate of a half hour or an hour after a strenuous workout?
Typically, I mean, that is the general rule, is 30 to 60 minutes, and it typically is 30 to 60 minutes is the ideal window for those carbohydrate and the glycogen stored replenishment. But if you're, it's not that hot right now. I mean, it's hot, but it's not that hot. This morning was 46, now it's 76. But the harder the intensity, typically you're not hungry within that hour window. So you might want to just do a small protein shake afterwards, and then really focus on eating 2 hours later and having a real meal then. So it really depends. If you're doing a long endurance kind of run, it could be 6 miles, 10 miles, depending on what your definition of endurance. But I think an endurance run is technically anything over 3 miles in some people's definition. But in those, sometimes if you're doing more of an endurance run, you're not really expending as much in intensity-wise. So then again, you could still kind of push it to an hour. It might even be an hour and a half. But if you're eating on that, with that balancing the blood sugar and getting the body to utilize fat stores for energy, then you don't really need like the glycogen stores don't need to be replenished because you didn't really blow through the glycogen stores. You've been burning your own fat stores for energy. So then it's not quite as necessary to adhere to that window because you don't have to replenish glycogen stores because you use more fat stores. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So the whole idea is to not get fixated really on the number of calories per meal, but look at the combination of what's in the meal. So even in that recovery meal, you want to have your protein and you want to have some carbohydrate, but you want to have the fat that slows down the absorption of the carbohydrates, and you want to have the green vegetables because that's where all the nutrients are. If you want to choose a better recovery carbohydrate, beets are going to be one of your best carbohydrates to use. Yes, beets. Beets.
Any of the colors? Just beets.
Preferably red beets, actually. They actually have more of the nitrous oxide in it, which is basically, it helps with recovery. It actually is great when I was juicing with beets years ago, and I would actually drink one of those before I went and did my 3, 4, 5 hour rides, and it was like the bomb. Having those beets was amazing. I was working with an Olympic rower, and she would have beets after her morning sessions, and she was like, oh my God, beets are the bomb. They make me recover so much faster. So if you don't like beets, you might want to experiment with them and see if you can actually include them in. But depending on the beet powder versus the real beet, I mean, the real thing is always better, You know, but if you can't get the real beet, probably the powder or dehydrated is going to be the next best bet. I do typically juice every morning, or put it in, actually I make a green smoothie, and it's predominantly all greens. But if I'm traveling, then I will take a powder, like a greens powder in a stick form, so that I have my greens, because I can't always travel with, you know, a smoothie. Especially if you're flying someplace, you're not taking a smoothie. I went to Wildwood this weekend, down to the shore for a open water swim race, and I was not making a smoothie at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was just not happening. So I ended up having one of those green sticks because it was, you know, easier than the other thing. So that actually does help. So it all depends on what's available. Raw is probably, you know, for juicing, obviously you want to do raw. The beet powder is probably going to be raw, so you're going to get a different nutrient and different kind of absorption than you would with cooked. But cooked are going to be easier digestion-wise for a lot of people than the raw, you know. So it all just depends.
Is there a layman's way to measure body fat?
Is there a layman's way of measuring body fat? No, not really. The way that you either have the body fat. I mean, I do a testing called bioimpedance analysis. So you put 2 electrodes here and 2 electrodes on the foot, and it runs a current through the whole body. You know, that you go to the gym and they have those little handheld units. You know, the ones the scales that you step on. You know, but the thing is, the scales that you step on, it basically does from leg to leg. The hand does hand to hand. Well, okay, the one that I have, it runs through the whole body, so then you get a whole body measurement, and you can get that very accurate reading that way. Otherwise, you have to do the caliper testing, which who's got calipers, and you can't test yourself because you can't grab and, you know, so you have to have somebody else do it. But then you would have to have the same person keep doing your testing, because there's that manual error based on who's testing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and then there's the bod pod, where you can actually get into some kind of a bod pod and get submerged underwater, and that's supposedly the most efficient.
Okay.
You know, but there's no self testing that you can do except for, you know, the body fat scale. But I do have the bioimpedance analysis testing that is available, that actually will give you more than just the body fat, and it'll give you your basal metabolic rate, it'll tell you your overall cell health, it'll give you readings indicating whether you have inflammation or have dehydration issues. So it's pretty cool. So if you're interested in that, just ask me later and we'll tell you more about it. So I was talking about the body composition, right? So we're done with that one. And meal composition. So this is general, because it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. But generally speaking, in order to get into that, you know, fat burning, metabolic efficiency kind of mode, you want to lower the carbohydrates of a lot of your meals and increase the fat. Have some moderate protein, and then a lot more green vegetables probably than what you're used to. So generally it's going to be like a cup of green vegetables. It's going to be 2 to 3 ounces of, you know, maybe like a half a cup. For men, probably more like a cup of protein. And then half a cup to a cup of carbohydrate, depending if you're a female or male. And then fat is going to be, you know, up to an ounce of fat, sometimes even a little bit more. So if you're going to have broccoli, throw, you know, melted butter on. If you're going to have, you know, salad, put the full fat dressing on it. Do not go low fat. Low fat means sugar full. So you want to try to minimize the sugar and increase the amount of fat. But if you only lower the carbohydrate, go high protein and low carb without changing the fat and keeping it low fat, you're actually going to be going into that starvation mode. You're going to have all sorts of other issues, like constantly hungry, because the fat is what actually the body is craving, and the fat is what's basically keeping the body satiated for a lot longer. So don't try the low fat, low carb. You have to go low fat, high fat.
So based on what you just described, green eggs, low protein, all good. I've been falsely accused of using extra virgin olive oil, really good lean oil.
Yeah.
falsely accused of a heavy pourer. So
Maybe you just instinctively knew that you're supposed to be putting more on there, but fat has a bad rap. I mean, for how many? Pardon me?
I'll go what? Give me a range here.
So basically, if you're putting it on a salad, I would say anywhere between a tablespoon, maybe even up to 2. But you could you could even do 2 tablespoons. You could add avocados or nuts in there, and just do a tablespoon of the olive oil. You know.
Girl, you're wrong.
I'm not wrong. I'm not right or wrong. You know. But it's a basically see how it goes. No, you gotta chew more. You just gotta chew more. Chew. Right, chew. But yeah, the olive oil is not typically an issue. You know, but a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm just gonna dip my fork in and that's it.
It's a 4 count.
However much it is, but don't be alarmed by that. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
You know. But if you're having a half a cup of olive oil, that might be, you know, in one sitting. That might be, you know. But you could still add nuts and seeds in there. You could still put avocados in there. You could still put olives. You know. So there's all sorts of ways of getting that extra fat in there. Good fat. But you want to get the good fat. You don't want the processed food fat. You don't want the deep fried onion rings fat. You know.
Careful.
Well, you don't want that to be your predominant choice of fat. You know, once in a while, oh, fine. I had one on Friday, you know.
There you go.
Once. I had one. I should have taken a picture because nobody would believe me if...
I was going to call you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but, you know, it's putting it all in perspective, you know. So it's keeping it all in balance. But do not be afraid of the fat because the fat is really what your body wants more of. But it doesn't necessarily need that much in terms of carbohydrates, but it needs more of the green vegetables as well. But you want to try to get those meals in every, you know, 3, maybe 4 hours through the whole day. If you're being really good, this is the fun one. Like, oh, I'm really good at my control all day until after dinner. Anybody hear that one? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hear that all the time. It's usually because you're kind of skimping on all your meals during the day. A lot of times skipping the afternoon snack when you ate at 6 o'clock in the morning, you ate at noon, you're running at 6, and you didn't eat at 4. And so when you do finally eat at 7 or 8 after your run, you're pretty much eating the kitchen sink, everything in the refrigerator, and anything that's not bolted down, you know? So you're not really balancing that blood sugar really well. You've done a really great job of controlling your intake for the whole day, but you want to take what you're eating, kind of like take it all, put it into a bin, and then say, okay, I'm gonna eat every 4 hours today. So you just put, I'm gonna eat this here, there, and you kind of parcel the whole thing out throughout the whole day, so that you have equal-sized meals, eating every 4 hours. And for some people, it'll be every 3 hours. You know, if it's every 2 hours, then you're definitely eating the wrong combination because you shouldn't be eating that often. So trying to get into to your ideal weight, it's about managing what you're eating, how often you're eating it, what's the combination, and start paying attention to what your body's actually telling you. You know, how are you actually feeling after those meals? If you're falling asleep at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there's something that you didn't do right earlier in the day. You know, if you're running out of energy during your runs, and let's say you do your longer runs on the weekends, and you're petering out after 45 minutes, there's something wrong with the fueling that you're doing and the meal combinations, because you should have energy for an hour run doing absolutely nothing, just on your normal eating patterns. So if you're not having that energy for longer activities, then you have to start looking at what you're taking in. And it's not about how much you weigh or don't weigh. It's really about, do you have the energy to do the activity that you're trying to do? You know, are you trying to starve yourself to run? Well, okay, so there are some theories that you can go ahead and not eat and go do all sorts of activity, and you can train your body to burn fat stores. But you still have to fuel it somewhere. And you've got to know what to fuel with when you're trying those activities. In the morning, first thing, you can go and basically run on nothing. But you probably, if you're running longer than an hour, you're going to need to add some kind of a snack in there just to keep the energy levels going. You're going to need to add some kind of fluids in there just to be able to keep going. But then it's about focusing on getting those meals in every 3 to 4 hours, within an hour of finishing that morning activity. If you're running in the evening, you want to make sure that you're getting some fueling in. If you're running at 6:30, you want to have some kind of a good combination of basically, it's almost like you're having a mini dinner at 4:30. So you have the energy to be able to do the run 2.5 hours later. But if you don't have that meal and you're only eating at lunch, you're going into that starvation mode and your body's actually going into conservation mode. You might make it through your run, but you're actually not helping your body in the long term of actually burning fat. It's putting the body into a state of stress. Stress. And then you end up, if you continuously do that, then you get the cortisol reaction and you're actually storing fat rather than burning fat. So it's a whole combination of things where if you're not doing it quite right, you're actually storing the fat. You might be losing weight, but you're not losing the weight that you want to lose. And that's really about what I do is help my clients to put those pieces together. And a lot of times it's just tweaking the protocol, not we're starting over. So it's all about just looking at how am I feeling, when am I eating, what's in those meal combinations, and is there a way to improve? If you look at that stuff and you're like, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at, that's when it's time to call me and say, can you look at this, because I don't know what I'm doing. And a lot of times it's just 1 or 2 sessions, we tweak it and you're good to go. You learn, you apply, and you don't have to keep tweaking and guessing. But it's going to be different for every single person. So does anybody have any questions?
If you can't get that meal in before like this 6:30 run tonight, what would you recommend for sort of a pre-run fuel?
So there's a couple options for pre-run fuel. I mean, even as simple as a bag of potato chips. I mean, it's not necessarily the best fat, but at least you're getting some easy to digest carbohydrates. If you made some baked potatoes, then that would be a really great thing too. Dates are another option with maybe a couple of walnuts or cashews or almonds. Because those are really easy to transport. The RX bars are pretty easy. A lot of times just like the Cliff bars or some of like a Nature Valley granola bar. Something like that would be easy enough. For some people, fruit is an easy thing that they can just have that, half hour beforehand. So it's really just playing around with that.
Are grapes acceptable? Grapes?
Yeah, grapes are acceptable. For some people, grapes are too sweet, but, other people it works just fine. So there's not really a right or wrong. But you want to kind of be aware of those things, because if you've got a 6-hour gap between when you last ate and when you're running, at least during the day, then you might not be getting the best quality run that your body can actually provide. The same thing on the weekends. If you're getting up early, because your body clock says you're getting up still at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you decide not to run till 10, and you didn't eat anything, you are not going to have that great of a run. So then does it really matter what you weigh? No, you didn't fuel your body. So it's about kind of finding that happy balance of how did I fuel my body, and how can I get it to do what I want it to do? How do I get it to actually start burning more of the fat stores and stop storing more fat stores?
For a weekend workout, is it more the Friday night dinner into the Saturday morning workout, or given that scenario of having an egg bagel sandwich at 7 o'clock and running at 10, it's more the egg sandwich versus the Friday menu?
It's kind of complicated. Complicated and simple. So, but it depends. What you have the day before does affect what happens the next day. But it's not always just the dinner meal. Because remember, if you kind of skipped a bunch of meals and just focused on dinner on Friday, that dinner is not going to be probably enough to help you on that run the next morning. So you want to actually still have those scheduled meals through the day, and yeah, add a little bit more carbohydrate to dinner. Still keep a higher fat and some of the protein and the vegetables, but you can increase by 10 to maybe 15% more carbohydrates at that dinner. Then in the morning, yes, you can have your bagel or half a bagel depending on how much you can actually eat. With the egg and the whole egg, because the yolk actually has some fat that slows down some of the
Or
absorption.
probably 2 tablespoons at most of peanut butter, right? You're gonna hold me to 2 tablespoons of peanut butter.
I would rather you have an egg than peanut butter, quite honestly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, honestly I would. But but then you could still have that in the morning and then go run at 10. Or you could just go run at 7 and then eat the bagel with the egg afterwards. But throw some greens on there. Throw some greens in there. Scramble the eggs with a whole bunch of greens. That's the way to do it. And then put that on the bagel. Yeah. So there are ways to do it. And then make sure you scramble it with some olive oil or some butter in the pan, because you need some fat. So does that help?
Yeah.
Very much.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. So thank you for coming, staying, and if you have any questions, I've got some cards here. I'm Joanna Hodorowska, nutritioninmotion.net.
Were you in the area?
And I am in the area, I'm on the other side of town, literally 5 miles from here.